Hello everyone! It's been a while since we have this kind of video, isn't it? Okay, welcome back and welcome to our science class. For today, we are going to study about plants. Last time, we studied about animals, but now we want to classify some plants in our life. So, why do we need to classify our plants? Well, like the animal, it makes easy to identify and study every kind of plants. Imagine if you want to know about some plants, but you don't know the characteristic. For example, if you want to explain you to your friend that you are eating an apple, what would you say? Maybe you will say that the apple is round, the color is red, there's a stem on the top, and there's also a little bit of seed inside. But that also applies to another kind of fruits. For example, strawberries. So that's why we need to classify plants to make sure that we know for every kind of plants has their own groups. And on our Earth, there are more than 500,000 kinds of plants. There are in different shapes, in different sizes. You could see those plants that are small, but also those plants that as tall as a building. So we need to classify them. There are several ways to classify plants, and we're gonna look every one of them from your book from Unit 5. There are type of stems, there are also flowering and non-flowering plants, there are also seed producing or spore producing plants, and for the last one, there are also fruit bearing plants and non-fruit bearing plants. But we also have to know that there are some plants are useful and harmful to us and to the environment. So we're gonna see them one by one. For today, we're gonna look at the stems and also the flowering and non-flowering plants. So first things first, the type of stems. The stem in Bahasa means batang are different. There are two types of them. The first one is woody and the second one is non-woody. But what does it mean with the woody and non-woody stem? Well, the woody means wood. So the stem that you look at the plants are made out of wood. That's why it's called woody stem. There are several examples of woody stems, like a tree, a shrub, semak-semak, or some vine. A vine is a stem that you can say try to find their way to tie itself to something so that they can grow out and make some fruits. Now let's take a look about trees. As you can see here, trees are plants with a thick and woody stem. The stem of a tree, we called it as a trunk. There are a lot of trees around us. Well, one way that we can identify a tree is looking at the crown. As we can see here, the crown means the top part of the tree. There are different types of crowns, but they have the same similarities. Each crown consists from leaves and branches. There are several shapes of crown. In your book, there are rounded, umbrella-shaped, and cone-shaped. Sorry, that was Miss Dia searching for Mr. Nana. Okay, let's move on. Now, other than trees, there are also shrubs. Shrubs, or like I said, semak-semak, are smaller than trees. If trees can grow big into maybe 20 meters tall, well, for shrubs, it's only maybe about 1 meter. The example of shrubs are like roses, lavenders, jasmines, and everything like that. So they are different from trees, especially from their stem. If trees, we call their stem as trunk, but in shrubs, we call them, well, stems. Now about vine. Vine is actually smaller than shrubs. They cannot grow by themselves. They need a stick or a pole to support their own structure. The best example of vine is a grapevine. They can tie themselves up to the terrace and then hang some grapes from there. And that way we can harvest them. Now, let's move on to the non-woody stem. There are grass, herbs, and also vine, but non-woody. Now, why is it called non-woody? Let's take a look at this picture. What do you think this is? This is a picture of a bamboo forest. Bamboo is a type of grass. The biggest, or you could say the tallest grass in the world. Bamboos can grow 60 centimeters or more per day. Other than the tallest grass in the world, bamboos also the fastest growing plants in the world. It is good for building structure. It is good for our health too. If you like to eat some young bamboos, it's also great. If we see the inside of the bamboo, it's actually hollow and long, and it usually has a narrow and long leaves grow from the stem. So they don't use any branches. Their leaves just, well, my phone just rang. Okay, let's move on. So they grow their leaves from the stem itself, not from the branches. And it rang again. Okay, let's continue. Now, we already talked about bamboos, but actually, we also need some of the grass that we eat. For example, rice. We eat rice every day, and rice is the type of a grass. After grass, there's also herbs. Herbs do not have woody stems, just like grass. Their stem is succulent or full of juice. You could say it's juicy and self-supporting. Herbs are good sources of spices, medicines, and aromatic oil. Now, there are also a non-woody vine. It's basically the same. The difference are just the other one has some wood, the other one doesn't. So let's move on to the flowering and non-flowering plants. Most trees, shrubs, herbs, and grasses are flowering plants. However, how about this? Do you know what it is? This is moss or lumut. So moss is also a type of plants, but moss doesn't produce flowers. Now let's take a look at some plants that produce flowers. Now, the most famous flower in Indonesia is Rafflesia arnoldi. Do you know why? Because Rafflesia is the largest flower in the world. But there is something that is kind of different from any other flowers. The Rafflesia plant has no stem, leaves, or true roots, and the flower can weigh up to 10 kilograms. That's just a little fun fact about the biggest flower on earth. Now, let's take a look how a flower blooms. Let's try to look at this video. Beautiful, isn't it? Well, that's how flowers blooming. And they are beautiful, but they do that because they want to spread their offsprings. And the way they do that with several ways, but we will not discuss it for now. Just remember that the spreading of their own offsprings called pollination. In bahasa, pollinasi. Now let's move on to some non-flowering plants. There are at least two types of non-flowering plants. Ferns, if in bahasa Indonesia we call it rumput kuda, and moss. So these plants don't use flower, but they also have some seeds. But there is a fun fact about moss. Did you know what will happen if a volcano erupts and then the life around or the ecosystem around the volcano were dead? The first thing that will grow is moss. So moss is the first plant that will grow in an extreme condition, and it will help other plants to grow over there too. Well, that's it for today. We already talked about plants. Sorry, I got a call from someone. Okay, yes, we already talked about plants. We already talked about flowers too. We already talked about their stems. And that's it for today. Okay? We will talk about it more in the next video. Well, I will see you again next week then for the science class. Bye bye!